Right, folks, how's things? We're back here for another week. Things are heating up now. Well, nearly heating up, maybe. So the four games we're going to go on about. We're going to go on about tonight. Obviously, Mayo Louth played the weekend. Cork, Kerry, Tyrone, Armagh, Donegal, and Derry. And look, we'll go on about the Tailteann Cup as well. The preliminary quarterfinals are coming up, and the quarterfinals waiting for them. So there's a lot to talk about, Stevie. How's things there? What's the story?
Yeah, not too bad, Enda. Not too bad. Busy weekend of football. I think the last weekend, I think if I'm right in saying, was the very first weekend in the history of the GAA where we had all 32 counties playing in championship football for the first time ever in
Wow.
in the GAA. Yeah, so with a full program of fixtures between Tailteann Cup
Mm.
and obviously Sam Maguire. Obviously debatable. A lot of talking point of the weekend, maybe about the
Yeah.
attendance at the games.
Yeah.
Um,
Big
it's
time.
debatable. It's the right structure. I don't want to say I told you so, but I think we were talking about this since February. We knew what was coming down the line. We knew that there was going to be issues. We knew that there was going to be a problem with three teams qualifying. And now you're probably sitting in a situation where you could have perceivably have a team qualify on 1 point
Yeah.
and a team not qualify possibly on 2 points. It doesn't really make sense at all,
This is, and the thing is, Stevie, the thing that struck me over the weekend was, or the media, social media kind of debate the last couple of days is obviously on about the structures and on about how we can change Gaelic football for the better. Obviously, these are winter, in my opinion, these are kind of winter debates. But the fact that they're on about these debates in the height of championship season, that kind of tells me something about the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. And then you got to remember as well too, and I suppose there's this sort of quip in it. Funny, I was sitting in my father's house on Saturday before the FA Cup final, and I was saying to him, the FA Cup final used to be the best day
Yeah,
on football and calendar, right? Because you had grandstand on a Saturday morning, you watched the teams coming out, right, and you watched this, and you were so excited, and you were glued from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock to build up, right? But you don't really care about it anymore. A lot of people probably didn't even watch the game because there's so much football on nowadays.
yeah,
So you are
yeah.
exposed now between inter-county level now, between GA Go and RTE and high players and all sorts and illegal streaming and stuff like that. You're getting access to all these games now. You're probably watching more football than you ever watched. Social media is more prevalent now as well. Everyone's got an opinion on a game now. There's more analysis done on a game now than's ever been done. They're critiqued and analysed to the high heavens. So therefore, you're going to have huge amount of diverse opinions. So my opinion on the Mayo Louth game, for example, at the weekend might differ from yours. If you speak from a Mayo perspective, you're going to be utterly disappointed. With Mayo, how they stumbled over the line against Louth. Whereas I'm coming in from a tactical point of view, saying, well, Mickey Hart and Gavin Devlin made Louth competitive. In previous years, Louth would have went to McHale Park or whatever and possibly lost by 15, 20 points, and got absolutely hockeyed and steamrolled. So, they had a game plan, they had a structure. Yes, was it pretty on the eye? No. Did they make themselves competitive? Yes. Did Louth fans go down the road with half a smile on their face? Probably yes, because they weren't beat out the gate and they had a chance to win the game. Whereas if you go and watch, for example, Monaghan versus Clare, 123 to 118, hugely entertaining game. Monaghan pulled away with a very, very late Conor McCarthy goal. A game that had 24 scores from Monaghan, 19 from Clare, 33 scores in a game of football, in a game where many of the people wouldn't have said, Jesus, that's not a game that would maybe whet the appetite. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if we had to watch Monaghan Clare, there probably was maybe an outrage on social media then that, Jesus, the game's in a great state, it's so healthy. So it's
yeah.
important you don't get sort of lost in the hysteria of like one game. If you have 32 games on over the course of a weekend, you're not going to get 32 good games,
No.
unfortunately. And it's the same in any sport, rugby, soccer, hockey, whatever, any field sport, you're going to get really good games and you're going to get poor games and you're going to get sort of underwhelming games. And that's just the way, that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of team sport.
Just touching on the Mayo Louth game, obviously, Stevie. What did you? Obviously, Louth kept it tight. Frustrated Mayo. Blanket defence again. We've had this discussion as well with the Mayo team, present and past, that they've struggled, or we've struggled with breaking it down. That might, against the better teams, well, we kind of play that kind of system as well. But what's your opinion on it? Did you learn anything new from Mayo or Louth, or what do you
Well,
think?
Roscommon also beat them in the championship playing that way, and which is interesting. Now we had this conversation with Seven Chip. I personally don't think it was. I don't see it as a negative from Louth, right? Because what Louth are doing is they're making themselves competitive. Okay, they're giving themselves a chance to stay in the game, go down the home stretch, and possibly nick a win, right? And it's an like a smash and grab. And by doing that, they decided they were going to concede the majority, if not all, of the kickouts.
Yeah.
So what you're doing there is you're eliminating Mayo's sort of lower body running power. Where for me, Mayo are one of the most strongest running sides in the country. When the likes of Durkins and Full Flow and O'Connor and these guys, like, they can rip you apart. They can really, really rip you apart. They've got a lot of really, really good strong running power. And if you go man to man on a press high, and Mayo win the ball in the middle third, and it's a 1v1 duel or it's a 2v2 duel, you're in massive trouble, especially with the conditioning levels and the athleticism of some of these players now. And they can just turn and burn you, and you're in big, big danger. So Louth eliminated that threat, obviously, by dropping off and playing a very deep line defensive zonal system. The big issue for Mayo, from my point of view, is they have some very, very smart players. Ryan O'Donoghue is probably one of the smartest forwards they have. His guile, his movement, his explosive agility, it's on par with any forward. He's a really, really, really smart individual. But I just felt collectively Mayo were very, very one-dimensional from an attacking point of view. And you had talked about the lack of a structured attack. Derry, for example, it might not necessarily be at 100 mile an hour, but it's very, very pointed. It's very, very deliberate. Their attack is very, very deliberate. They know exactly how they're attacking. They know exactly how they're going to break down the blanket defense. They're going to really, really flood the opposition's final third. They're going to maybe overload one side. They're going to create clusters. They're going to create 1v1 duels. They're going to bring the ball to the corner. They're going to bring the ball to the sideline. They're going to bring it to the end line. Mayo just didn't ask those questions of Louth, and that was a big, big disappointing thing for me. Very, very easy to bring men back. It's very, very easy to bring men back and have them organised. That's the easiest part of the game. The hardest part of the game is obviously making that transition from defence to attack. And that's probably actually where Louth probably struggle a little bit as well, to obviously post a big number, because 110 is probably not going to win you a game of football. 111. The modern game of football now, particularly in summer ball, it's going to take the guts of 16, 17 points or maybe 18 to win a big game, and that's where I feel Mayo could just falter. I still think, in my honest opinion, I know we're going to do our rankings very, very soon and where we see the top 5 at the minute. I still think Mayo are probably number 1, based on the fact that they've probably shown a high degree of consistency throughout the league and throughout the championship. But Sunday worried me. It really, really worried me from a Mayo perspective that, wow, like before the game, I was thinking Mayo are really, really close here this year. They're the standout team so far, but Mayo are going to come up against stiffer, tougher, sterner, and more athletic challenges than Louth, and that's the worrying thing from a Mayo perspective.
Yeah, look, it was interesting from Rochford. Stephen Rochford had comments after the game saying, it was disappointing. We felt we didn't get going or our attack and all that. But in terms of, there's a few things in that, Steve. In terms of the game management, I thought a positive thing for me was the game management in terms of towards the end. I know Louth scored 1-1, but I think there was a stage in the middle. It was about 65 minutes gone, and Mayo, I'd say, were 4 to 5 points up, and they were keeping the ball a bit like Roscommon, and Louth were back in their own 65 waiting for Mayo to attack. And I think maybe I'm wrong here, maybe someone can correct me here, but I think the crowd started booing Mayo because they weren't attacking, and I'm just like, what the fuck, what's going on here? We're 5 points up here, let Louth come out. It's going to be easier for us to attack. This fucking champagne football, or whatever you want to call it, is in flamboyant, hammer. At the end of the day, you want to get over the line. We're 5 points up. Let Louth come out. We have. There's only 10 minutes left in the game here. I did not get that at all. And Mayo's they attacked and they drew a free out of it. But in my eyes, I would have kept that ball for 3-4 minutes. If Louth didn't stir, well, we're winning the game here. And also with Rochford's comments as well after the game, this has been an ongoing thing in terms of the Mayo attack, in terms of a blanket defence. Like, they know, like, how easy is it in training to set up for this in terms of practice this over and over again and get into the bloody dressing room before your practice session and go through what you want to do as a collective unit and go through before you go out, and then obviously execute it when you go out there. To me, I don't know, is it like, we say, when I was playing, it's always players need to be challenged. I'd be challenging the coaching staff there in terms of, I didn't see anything different there. If I was a player, I'd be saying, right, what are we doing here as a collective here? Because the next day against Cork, it's going to be the exact same fucking thing here. And the whole thing of saying, having these buzzwords of saying having patience and keep it wide. Well, what the hell does that even mean here, lads? What does that mean really? Tell us, what's the next step here? These are buzzwords here, but as a collective, there's going to be 12 players. We're going to be facing 13, 14 players, total team behind the 45 here. What do we want to do here as a collective? And that's the situation in terms of the next couple of weeks, where the Mayo coaching team have to come together and sit down, because obviously this has been an ongoing thing for Mayo for the last 2 or 3 years. Not even 2 or 3, the last fucking 10 years, to be honest with you. And we still haven't gotten it right. Some teams have, but Mayo, that's our Achilles heel still to this day. In terms of, you see it in an open country there. When Mayo gets a quick transition ball, there's no one in the country that's going to touch them, because we have the best athletes in the country in terms of transition ball, getting that kick pass away. Loud struggle on that in terms of transition ball. They didn't have the skill set. They didn't have the athletes either to get that quick transition. That they turned over the ball a bit, but you could see even the first half, the Poacher goal chance, Ado took an extra solo, or the solo went awry and the goal chance went away. Even we say another, like, you see how dangerous Mayo are in terms of the transition ball, in terms of when they get a turnover, it is bloody blistering pace going up the field. But again, I would like to see, we'll say, as you said there, a structured attack. What's going to happen here in terms of that? I know that's probably a bit of a rant there, but it's really, I just see that.
I'm sure you feel very passionate about it, because you've been talking to me about it for a while now, and you're obviously, it's something you know Mayo football a hell of a lot better than I do and ever will do. And I know that you've been speaking about this, and even through the National League when things were going well, you talked about, Mayo's, you're worried about Mayo and those clutch moments where the game's level, it's 13-all, it's 15-all, you need a score. Never on Sunday at any stage when I was watching Derry and Donegal, for example, never at any stage did I feel Derry weren't going to break Donegal down, even though Donegal had those huge numbers back. Donegal obviously were the template from, McGuinness's reign, where it was, the deep line defensive zonal system. Obviously Pillar Caffrey brought it into Dublin in 2011, and they won in All Ireland on the back of that in 2011, where the two wing backs were very static and didn't really attack, and obviously kept a very, very rigid, defensive system. And then McGuinness took it to a whole new level, obviously, in the semi-final that year, in 2011. But for me, and my concern for Mayo is that they actually are fixing part of their problem as well, and the fact that they have actually become a bit more defensively sound. They've become more defensively resolute, and they've started to obviously defend in greater numbers. They're scrambling harder, with a bit more organisation about defensively than they would have previously had. They're not going with the whole man-to-man, all over the field, from minute 1 to minute 70, and that's not sustainable, as we know. So they are learning in that respect. Their game management has improved, but you will not win the big prize without having some form of a set play offensively, or having some form of patience where, you're bringing the ball to the corner, you're finding little pockets, you're getting cuts going, you're getting decoy runs going, you're getting hard runners coming off the sailing, whatever needs to be happening. And that's something that I think they need to improve on over the next few weeks. And listen, it's probably good because they've won 2 games, so they have qualified. I think, am I right in saying they have qualified as group winners, unless Louth beat Kerry, which is highly unlikely, because Kerry and them, they've beaten Kerry. So on a head-to-head, even if Cork were to beat Mayo, on a head-to-head, Mayo are going to finish above Kerry. So they have won the group. So next week's a great opportunity for them to actually do, or 2 weeks, to do a bit of work over the next few weeks in the training ground, as you say, with the coaches, and get these work-ons then motoring when they play Cork.
That's it's look, Stevie. I think we both agree here. I think Mayo are there, like we're there. It's just the small inches. There's the 1%, the 2% at the end, as you said, the clutch moments at the end. Can we get a score here when we really need it as a team here? And we know exactly what we do as a collective here. But anyway, look, Tyrone Armagh obviously was the big one in Ulster. Obviously, it's not Ulster, but as an Ulster affair. Reno Neal sending off, obviously, after 28 minutes was a big one. I have to agree with some of the I thought it was unjust. Maybe I didn't get a proper camera angle off it, but I thought it was bloody. I thought it was ridiculous, to be honest with you, Stevie. I was pissed off by it.
It was.
Maybe go on.
No, it was harsh, but I'm just looking at a few things here now. Obviously Tyrone won the game 13-11, right? And for me, it was a real typical Ulster affair, obviously, and there was a lot of edge to the game. They don't like each other. That's very very evident. My only concern, but obviously for Armagh, is probably what Kieran McGeady would say, and I would echo his comments as well. They're missing a lot of chances, Enda. And I suppose people are quick to sort of point the finger at Armagh. Oh, they're not playing the same football as last year, etc. But then again, they're missing a lot of chances. And I suppose when you're missing those chances, it obviously is probably more frustrating for you as a management team to sort of look in the game and say, well, in the first 10, 15 minutes, Armagh cut Tyrone open, had a couple of big goal chances. Niall Morgan pulled off some really, really good saves. If those goals go in, it all of a sudden becomes a different game, It's hard to know, and I've said this actually to a couple of people in the last week, it's actually hard to know where both sides are, okay, in the whole global thing, as in, because everybody that's in the Sam Maguire obviously has to be considered as contenders, bar those that have been knocked out, i.e. Clare and one or two other counties are sitting at 0 points. But you have to obviously look at Tyrone and Armagh and think to yourself, if they put together two big performances, they're in an All-Ireland final. Do you know what I mean? If they can put together two big performances, which is capable. Now, at the weekend, McCurry, Canavan, Donnelly, Canavan, Hempsey, Kilpatrick, Mailer, they had 7 or 8 different scores on Sunday pass or Sunday passed against Armagh. Yes, Darren McCoy scored 5 points, but not 13 is not going to win you an All-Ireland. And we've talked about this and we've mentioned this. I personally feel that the game has definitely evolved. I know there's a lot of criticism around the game, and I know there's a lot of talk about negativity, about long bouts of possession, etc., but we're picking out sort of, fleeting moments rather than actually looking at, the overall sort of context of a lot of games. There's a lot more scores now. There's a lot more scores coming off kickouts. There's a bigger emphasis on coaching, on kickouts, how you defend a kickout, how you attack from a kickout. There's a massive emphasis on how to break down the deep line defensive blocks. And I think these are all obviously going to open the game up naturally, for me, because if you're playing a defensive system like Louth, you give yourself a chance to compete and win games against higher caliber of opposition. But Kerry will not beat Mayo playing like that, and Mayo will not beat Kerry playing like that, because they know there has to be different elements in those bigger games. There has to be moments where you go after a kick out. There has to be moments where you take a chance. There has to be moments where you gamble. And that's how you're going to win those big games, And for me, Armagh scored 7 points. Tyrone scored 13. The week before, Tyrone scored 13 against Galway. I think Armagh, I can't remember the top of my head, I think they got 113 against Westmeath. That level of scoring is probably not going to be enough to make yourself a contender, come the business end. You're going to need that sort of golden 16, 17, 18 scores, in my point of view.
I Tyrone, to me, have better attacking options, Stevie. Like McCurry and Canavan, to me, I think McCurry, I don't think he gets mentioned an awful lot in terms of being the top forwards in the country. But to me, he's gone another level now in terms of turning that corner left and right. His right side has really improved in terms of coming in off the left and popping over his right foot. He just looks so bloody sharp at the moment. Canavan as well has a look about Peter off him in terms of the way he solos the ball and jinx, the way he goes around players. The two of them are absolutely geez, they're a joy to watch. To be honest with you, I love watching the two of them. They're so bloody sharp in the way they take on a man and clip it over the bar from different angles. I think you're right with Armagh. I don't think that the offensive firepower, Stephen, to go that extra step. They might get to an All-Ireland semi-final, but when you get to the latter 4 stages, I just don't think they have enough. Look, with with your comments with the negative football here, like, they're on about bringing I think it was on the Sunday game, Sunday night, obviously Sunday or Saturday or Sunday, whatever it was, Sunday night. They're on about bringing in a stop clock, or not a stop clock, but what you call it? Yeah, shot clock. Shot clock. And to me, like, that would just be an absolute disaster.
That would make it again. That would make it more defensive, because you're obviously going to have teams then that would flood back and run the clock. Look, none of that. There's none of that needs. There's one small thing that might change things, in that the back pass rule in Gaelic football, like soccer, you can't give the ball back to the goalkeeper. Right, is an interesting rule, because obviously then it stops those long bouts of possession, like AKA Roscommon Dublin, because then it's a bit like the kick out. The kick out where the goalkeeper can't get it back. Goalkeeper might be able to take the ball from a forward pass, but can't maybe get it back from a backward pass. If it's a backward pass to a goalkeeper, it rules out that one where a team can go man to man, and you still have the keeper out the back of the quarterback dictating. So for me personally, that backward pass to the goalkeeper, that might stop a lot of the possession football, Enda, in my opinion. But look, the game is going to naturally evolve anyway. But come back to Tyrone, Tyrone have also as well, it's worth considering this, the likes of Hempsey, Niall Morgan, Matty Donnelly, Conn Kilpatrick, Conor Mayo, Peter Hart. I'm only naming now off the top of my head. I'm not, but they have a huge amount of experience as well. They're a very, very experienced group. They have won an All-Ireland, whether we want to talk about the COVID All-Ireland or whatever the frick you want to call it. This group have won an All-Ireland, and there is a huge level of experience among them. A lot of this group have also won underage All-Irelands as well, and there's a funny part of me that just would not rule them out of a big scalp and being in a semi-final in Croke Park. And I'll tell you this now, if Mayo or Galway or Derry or Dublin or Kerry were in a semi-final against them, there would be a little bit of a nervous edge about those teams, because you just know yourself, when they get to Croke Park, there's a bit of momentum behind them. They're a tricky customer, and that was a huge win for them at the weekend, because now they've got a game against Westmeath at a neutral venue. They will beat Westmeath, 100% will beat Westmeath, and they'll finish in 4 points. And it puts Armagh now under a little bit of pressure, in that they're probably going to finish now in 3rd place in the group, which leaves them then in a situation where they face an away game in the preliminary quarterfinal, and that away game could be against Kerry. That's the reality.
Yeah, that's the reality. Yeah, and getting on to the Kerry and Cork game, obviously Kerry closed out. Close game was 2 points in the end, but again, Stevie, we're on about Kerry the last few weeks. Unconvincing. As I read a newspaper article today saying, are Kerry just waiting in terms of, are they really arsed with the group stages? Was pretty much what I got from the connect.
I had this conversation today with someone. Actually, we're talking about the All-Ireland contender stuff, and you've got to remember as well, we talked I think it was maybe last year at the start of the year, and me and you had a conversation about this, and we chatted about Kerry in general, right? If you looked at the All-Ireland final last year, if you had taken David Clifford out of the Kerry team last year, Galway would have won the All-Ireland. Right? Now, you could argue the same view that if you'd taken Shane Mulch out of Galway, then obviously they would have been defunct of a lot of scores. But if you take Clifford out of Kerry, and I think Kerry come back to the pack quite a bit. And when I say the pack, I'm talking about the top half of the pack, not talking about the pack as in the bottom 16 teams. I'm talking about the pack, those that I would call contenders, your top 5 or 6, right?
Yeah.
Kerry out of the pack. I don't think there's an awful lot separating the teams this year, but the Cliffords have played an enormous amount of football over the last 12 months, an enormous amount of football, and even though they were playing for Fossa at junior club level, they were still playing in big games. They were still having to make the journeys in the buses. They were still having to do the warm-ups, go through the games, take the hits, take the knocks, regardless of how good they were or how, different level of footballer they were. They were still having to go through this. And I just feel there could be a little fatigue, a little bit of mental, physical fatigue with Kerry this year, from that point of view, that it's been a long, long season for those two in particular. They also have probably not gone back as early as other counties, so therefore there may be a little catch up going on from a conditioning point of view, from a work point of view. Maybe the work hasn't been done, maybe they've partied hard over the winter. There's all those things can come into consideration. And we've talked about this. If you're not going well now, it's very, very hard to just lift it all of a sudden, for a few weeks. So in 6 weeks' time, the All-Ireland final is going to be, obviously we're going to know who's in the All-Ireland final in 6 weeks' time. 6 weeks is not a long period of time, and there's 3 or 4 games to be played in that 6 weeks. So there's not a lot of time for counties to do a lot of work either in between games, physically and that. So I just feel that Kerry at the present moment in time, are just not motoring as well as I think they would like to be motoring, and I think that the defunct Munster Championship has probably papered over a few cracks. And regardless of what anyone says, at the weekend, Cork really gave Kerry their fill of it, and a large part of that trouble came from long kickouts. Kerry struggled in that battle. They struggled against Mayo in that department as well. They're massively missing David Moran, massively missing him around the centre of the park. And this is an area of the field where I think they can be caught and exposed when it comes to the big games. Now, saying all that, they still have that talent and that unbelievable sort of instinctive nature to create something out of nothing. Clifford burst off someone's shoulder the other day to take a score, out of nothing late on in the game, in a big clutch moment, and they still have that in their locker. But for me, the warning signs are there, and you called it last week. You felt it would be a very, very tight game. And it was a very tight game, and a large part of that obviously was down to, I feel personally, in that how much Kerry have sort of probably come back rather than how much Cork have progressed.
Yeah, look, see, I go one further here. I'll say if Kerry meet any of Dublin, Galway, Mayo, Derry or Tyrone in a quarter-final, they will be gone. Yeah. They won't. They're ready to be beaten here. Kerry will not win the All-Ireland this year. I'm putting my head on the block here. Seldom you see a team going through the league campaign they've had, and literally the beating the Mayo have given them, and just getting over the line against Cork, who are division, are they 2 or 3? 2, 3.
Yeah.
Or Cork, what are they? 2 or 3 again? 2. And they're like, it was middle. They finished in the middle of the table here. I just can't see it. Like you're it's funny. Like ironically, we're on about the Cliffords here having their long season. To me, the two boys are actually playing. It's the other boys that are letting them down in terms of the other. Like Sean Shea was a bit better the last day. He was going through a bad run of form there. Like the other players, you're talking like 5s out of 10, Stevie. I would say compared to last year, they were going 7, 8 out of 10. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just whatever it is, as you said, was it the long, as in getting back later? It just doesn't seem second year syndrome here. I cannot see it. I would be amazed if they went on to win the All-Ireland here with the history that tells me going down through the years, where you see a team, you saw last year Kerry going through the league. They're absolutely flying it. Did they have a defeat all year? They didn't have a defeat all year going through the league. Like they're an absolute. This is polar opposites here. It's a bit like Donegal in 2012 and 2013. Like in 2013, Donegal
measly defensively as well. They weren't conceding.
Yeah. Tadhg Mawley, another man that's gone off the boil in terms of his form. Like the question marks, as you said there, with their midfield. Jack Barry and Jim O'Connor haven't kicked on. Jim O'Connor was he's 23, 24. He hasn't seemed to have kicked on with Dave Moore retiring. Like they needed him to kick on. They don't have the options midfield. Who Adrian Spillane will fill in that role if one of them boys get injured. But who's number 4 there? Who's their fourth option midfielder? They don't really have it here that I know of. So look, we're going into the top 5 here. Actually, we're around about the top 5. I've pretty much named my top 5 there. But anyway, who we go 1 to 5? Who's your ranked? Who's number 1 for you as of now? Speaking now from the results.
As of now, and I'm basing this obviously on this year and this year alone. So, people obviously be shouting and going, oh, how are they above them? But I'm based on what I've seen so far this year. I have Mayo as at number one, very, very slightly at number one. Based on
Yeah,
the fact that they're league champions and they've also won 2 from 2 in the group and they have beat the current All Ireland champions.
yeah,
I'm going Galway number two,
yeah,
uh, based on the fact as well that, they were obviously, the Connacht champions and they have won their opening 2 games against Armagh and, against Tyrone and Louth. They face Armagh next week. Number three, just on probably based on the fact that they won their provincial title and they're still the current All Ireland champions. I have Kerry at 3, and then I have a sort of a joint fourth, a bit of a cop out, but I'm saying Dublin and Derry are in fourth for me, and then closely followed in sixth place by Tyrone. So that's my top sort of 5 or 6 at the minute.
yeah. I would, yeah, a bit different now. I'm gonna, as of now, um, I'm going with Dublin number one, Galway number two, Mayo number three, number four, Derry, number five, six, Kerry, Tyrone. I know that's a bit. The only reason, and I'll explain that why. Dublin, I thought I saw elements after the game against Kildare that really kind of reminded me of the Dubliner 4 or 5 years ago. They put up a decent score. I know, and the only as worrying thing would be their obviously inconsistency. They're obviously, good one week, shite the next week. But against Kildare, I saw elements that worried me, to be quite honest with you, Stevie. Galway, I think they've kind of gone under the radar in terms of the media. Haven't really talked about them too much. Seeing them against Westmeath the last day as well, very impressive. They butchered about 4 or 5 goal chances. That game could have been bloody 15, 16 point game, and they still ran out comfortable winners. And they're obviously kind of champions. And I just think last year's experience will stand to them in terms of the squad that they've assembled, with Peter Cook coming in, Ian Burke coming in. Peter Cook, honestly, guys, Stevie, I don't know, did you see it? But he sent one ball. It was against the breeze against Westmeath. It was just, I don't know if they pick it up the Sunday game, but he was coming in against the breeze around the 50-yard line. Ian Burke was coming out to him, running out to him, and Peter just said, he just pointed in. So Ian Burke checked back, and literally Peter fucking floated a ball in behind Ian Burke's man, and literally Ian Burke didn't have to break stride, man. It was about a 35-yard ball against the breeze, but that breeze obviously held it up. But it was just an unbelievable piece of skill in the way he did it. And obviously he's been a big plus for them this year in terms of he scored 3 or 4 points the weekend. John Maher came on, Comer only came on as well. So they have options there, which also worries me. Mayo obviously. Look, I don't have Mayo far behind. Again, do I trust, or do I feel that, against, the last 10 minutes of the game, will we have enough in terms of, can we get that clutch score when we really need it? That's my worry there with Mayo. I hope I'm wrong. Derry, number 4, I feel, I was very impressed with him against Donegal. Look at as you said there.
And the 10 different scores, 3-14. Obviously we know obviously with the whole high profile, stepping down of Gallagher and stuff. Obviously, we were thinking, is that going to have an impact for the group? Which naturally a lot of people on the outside would have thought it would have had. Coming off the back of an Ulster final, you're sort of thinking, did they get through the Ulster final based on muscle memory alone? But look, Kieran Meena and these guys, they're good coaches. They're following on from any obviously tactical work that they would have previously done. They are, for me, the one team that, from an offensive point of view, are really, really in sync with what they're doing. They also have some brilliant footballers. Lachlan Murray, obviously, I thought it was an absolute disgrace that he wasn't allowed to play in the under-20 Ulster final. Look, it was a big positive from a Down perspective. It meant that Down obviously ended up winning the final, which is brilliant. But for that young fella who got to have the opportunity to play in an Ulster final and then to come on in the 72nd minute 4 days later is it's gross misconduct from a coaching perspective. Like, you have to look at it and say to yourself, sorry, from a development perspective, I correct myself.
Yeah.
From a development perspective, it's gross misconduct. What is more important there for that young fella to get 60 minutes in an Ulster final at his own level, or to play for 1 minute, in a senior game? But look, Glass popped up with a score now. Toner Benny Hearn looks sharp again. Thought Benny's been off the boil for a while. Ironically, Wigan had one of his quieter games. He only took 1 from play, 2 free kicks, 3 in total. McFall's back in the reckoning now again. He's also kicked the. Yeah, he's good. McFall's always been a good player. Paul Cassidy, I think, at number 11, has had a fantastic season for Derry. A really, really outstanding individual. But look, from a Donegal perspective, obviously Oisín Gallen kicked 9 points. That Donegal put up a very spirited performance. Sean Patton caused a few problems with his kickouts as well for Derry. But look, the thin squad that Derry have may come back to haunt them. It just may come back to haunt them. If they picked up an injury to, for example, Chrissy McCaig, McKinless, you could probably argue Cassidy, Grugan. Yeah, McGrogan said a great season. Brennan Rodgers, Conor Glass. Have they enough strength and depth to come in and have those boys that been sitting on the bench, have they enough game time under their belt? Probably not, because they have just used the same pool of players on a consistent basis throughout the year,
How, Stephen, coming from a coaching perspective from yourself, during the championship, how do you keep those boys happy? It's very hard, isn't it?
It's the hardest part of management. The hardest part of management is obviously, the 15 that are on the field, they're happy. Look, it doesn't matter who you're working with or who you're coaching, right? Whether it's club, county, or school, any young lad or adult or any player who is involved in a panel, they want to play football, right? They don't want to be told, but you're trying to sort of sell it in the way, look, we're going to go deep into our squad. You're going to finish the game. Obviously, the way you're putting it now is that it's not that you're not starting, you're a finisher. So we want you on the field when the game is finishing. We want you coming into the game and being a finisher, because finishers now are obviously vitally important. And Mayo, obviously, throughout the league and stuff, we're obviously looking at their bench. Not something that I thought Mayo were producing as well as players coming into the game, late in games and obviously having an impact in games. And I think for me personally, from a coach's point of view, you've probably got to communicate with the players. That's the very first thing. You've got to talk to them. If the communication levels aren't there, then a player doesn't really know where he stands. You've got to actually let them know where they stand, where you see their role within the group, how you see them impacting the game. Every game is slightly different. So some games may require horses for courses. It may require a bigger, stronger individual to play in a certain area, or it may require a smaller, skillful, more nippy forward to come in and play and hurt an opposition who maybe have a so you're obviously trying to sell it in that respect, but keeping a squad happy, and particularly a big squad, Enda, is a very, very difficult task. And I know some counties like to rotate the 28. So for example, the 28 that are named, you nearly know that 25, 26, 27, 28 aren't going to play. But the following week, then maybe 29, 30, 31, and 32 replace them for go out, and you're sort of giving them, a carrot that, you're in the panel this week. And those guys then that were in the panel the previous week, they're maybe getting a bit of game time. But look, and the bottom line is, if a player's going well in training and performing in training, then you can be trusted in the games. But if a player's not going well in training, not performing in games, they can't be trusted. But players are, in general, at every level, are quite fickle, and they're only really interested in number one, themselves. They're not. Sometimes players really struggle, and for me personally, to see the greater good. And if you can get a group of players who understand that everyone has a particular role within the squad, and my role might not be starting, but my role might be hugely important, 15, 20 minutes. You have a great group on your hands there, really good group, But with this current format, such a short season, very, very hard to actually do that now,
Yeah, I just touch on before we finish with the the Donegal Derry game. Oisin Gallen, man, he was outrageous, Jesus, and he was on Chrissy as well, left and right. This guy, he's been knocking around for the last 3-4 years, probably with the Donegal, kind of in and out, like. But in fairness, he's probably 23, 24 now. But by God, he was outrageous the last day, left and right. Gave Chrissy a good going over, which was, you don't see that too often, I have to say. But it was nice to see that, I have to say, in terms of him stepping up, coming of age, and it was nice to see also Paddy McBurty coming back. Stunned about Teddy McCarthy, what a legend. My top 6 now would be Kerry, Dublin, Mayo, Galway, Derry, and Tyrone. Roscommon close. Who's that? Shirley Kay. How can you have Kerry? Well, Poacher, what happened to down against Meath? Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Listen, look, on a sad note now, obviously, Cork legend Teddy McCarthy unfortunately passed away suddenly this evening, and not that long ago there, the news just broke through there. The only player in GA history ever win an All-Ireland senior medal in both codes in the same season. So massive thoughts and prayers with Teddy and his family and friends,
That was obviously back in 1990, Stevie, was it?
So yeah.
Teddy. Yeah. Jeez, he's not old. He wasn't. What age is he? Jeez, he wasn't old.
Yeah, the news just came through there. I just seen it there coming through there on the feed,
Jack, if they get caught. Sorry, go on. Are you sitting there?
No, I'll just go back to actually you're talking there about the about somebody actually mentioned about Down and me there. I know we're going to chat about the Tailteann Cup, obviously. I don't think there's any real surprises from the winners of the group. Possibly Antrim winning their group over for Mana was a wee bit of a surprise, in my opinion. I think we fancied Limerick to come through that group quite strongly. Obviously Cavan top in their group was no surprise. And look, I thought it was going to be a bit of a coin toss between Meath and Down. I thought it was. It's always going to come down to that game, and look, Down kicked a lot of wides, unfortunately, throughout the game. But Down are producing some really, really good talent. Owen Murdoch, young player from the Burn Club. Owen's only 20. He's an outstanding individual, a really, really fine footballer. Probably one of the best midfielders that Down have produced now. In long and many's a day. So. There's a bit of promise there now. There certainly is a wee bit of promise, but hopefully against Longford now this weekend, we probably need to be a wee bit braver from a kick out perspective. We probably need to go after a few more kick outs and force Longford to go. Look, when you concede kick outs now, and it's difficult because you're handed the position, primary possession, then and it's obviously at this level, at inter-county level, to give up every kick out is it can put you under a lot of pressure. It's harder to put up the scores, Stevie. It's harder to put up. If you concede, look, we've had this debate before. If you concede every kick out. Now, even Louth against Mayo did commit numbers when it was a free. When Mulroy was taking a free, they did try and press the kick out at that stage. But it's just it's harder to put up scores. It's my take on it. But I also respect. Obviously, the teams want to be competitive and stay in the game. So, just looking at the Tailteann Cup here in terms of the preliminary quarterfinals and as you would always say, that the leagues don't lie. And Limerick Division 2, I know they got relegated. Meath Division 2, Cavan won Division 3, obviously, and Antrim Division 3. So they were obviously, and then you have the preliminary quarterfinals. You have Offaly, Wexford. Who's going to win that? Well, listen, look, Offaly obviously operating. They were in Division 2 last year. Obviously, they got relegated. Obviously this year, I watched them against Down actually this year. Now they were very, very disappointing against Down in that last league game. They were very disappointing, but they had a very, very spirited display. Obviously against Louth in the championship, they took Louth to extra time in the championship. I just feel the fact that they were playing at a slightly higher level of football is obviously going to give them the edge in this one. I think it's probably worth noting. It's probably worth noting a creditable landmark for Charlo captain Darragh for the weekend. He became the highest scoring forward in the history of Carlow football, beating the great Brendan Hayden's record. Dara has kicked over 400 points for Carlow now in a brilliant
Jesus.
career. But just on top of being a really, really top class forward, he's actually a really, really nice guy. Dara's a real gentleman. One of life's good guys, and I was delighted for him actually at the weekend, because he's probably the sole remaining member of that group that I would have worked with probably 5 or 6 years ago. All those other lads, the likes of Shane Redmond, Daniel St. Ledger, Paul Broderick, Sean Gannon, they've all moved on. Big horse lawlers away to the hurlers, So Dara's probably the one remaining stalwart who, and a lot of bad days. He would have seen a lot of bad days, in his time, and been on the end of some heavy defeats. So it was brilliant to see him reaching that landmark at the weekend. And it's not something that probably gets acknowledged on the likes of the Sunday game and stuff like that. But he's had a trawl up and down the length and breadth of the country like every other inter-county footballer for the last 13, 14 years. So listen, brilliant for Dara and his club as well, who are obviously going to be very proud. And I know his dad Jim used to drive the bus, the team bus for Carlow, a fanatical Carlow man. And I know Jim would have been very, very proud of the weekend. They're a guy who just loves and eats and sleeps and drinks his football. And listen, it was a great win for them, significant win, because I had said to you, Louth had a great record against Carlow in the past. So and again, Carlow, they will win at the weekend. They'll beat New York at the weekend unquestionably, and that's them then in a Tailteann quarter final. So you never know, if the draw is kind to them and they get an opportunity, they could slip through to the semi final in Croke Park, which would be brilliant because of a lot of.
Let's be honest, they had a fucking shit league. They didn't have a great league at all, TV.
A really, really poor league, but it's they've a lot of good young lads there. I've seen Maggie Bramrick go. Like, Maggie's got a lot of pace. Jamie Clark, Shane Clark, like a lot of these young lads, like Ross Dunphy. Ross Dunphy's a fantastic footballer. When I was with the Carlow senior team, Ross was coming through the minors, and I remember going up to Louth with Turlock to watch I think it was the under-21s playing. And Ross was playing at the time. The problem, we couldn't get our hands on him because he was at university in Cork and he couldn't drive. So therefore, logistically, it didn't work for him. But Ross is a fine footballer, great young talent. And they've good forwards and the hard ground. The hard ground, I think, is suiting these young lads. Because they're playing with a bit of pace and a bit of abandon in the way they play. And yourself now, and the young lads have no fear anymore. So listen. Who knows? But I still think it'll be one of the big four. I think. I think someone from Cavan, Meath down, or possibly Limerick's going to win it.
Who Fermanagh Laois? Fermanagh edges?
Yeah, look, Fermanagh had a brilliant league campaign, and I don't know what has gone wrong since that. Like, whether it was the defeat against Derry in the championship that has set them back or not, I don't know. But they haven't had a particularly good Tailteann Cup. The draw that they had in the first game against Wexford was an absolute horror result for them. They have good footballers. They have a brilliant manager in Kieran Donnelly, an astute manager. I don't think they'll leave any stone unturned. Laois football is in a critically bad way. I know, they're missing a huge amount of obviously household names, the likes of Tony Kingston, Colin Begley, Stephen Attride. Is Timmins still there? I think Timmins might be still there. Trevor Collins, Big John O'Loughlin, absolute war for Laois. He was the heartbeat of that group, in particular. And that's a big hole out of your team, to replace those men of that experience. Brodie was obviously, I wouldn't have said he was in my Christmas card list the same way, but he would have been a good goalkeeper in the fact that he would have been one of the very first goalkeepers that was coming out the field. So they haven't really replaced those players, and they were gone on Saturday. Like, London were winning by 2 points with time up, and Laois were out. Laois were out, and London were. And they pulled the draw out of the bag and ended up going through then by the basis of a point, and London obviously missed out. And London, to be fair, have had a huge turnover of players since Kieran Daly's day. To be fair to London, 3 or 4 years ago, they were playing, a lot of lads were playing in the London team that were really good quality forwards, including the likes of Rory Mason from my own county there and down. And Rory probably never got a fair crack this year. Maybe he would have felt he didn't get a fair crack with Down. He was in and out of the panel, and then he eventually left the panel. But Rory Mason is as good a left foot. His club is actually top of Division 1 and Down at the minute, and he's shooting the lights out here in club football and Down. And London have had good forwards, really good footballers. I'm nearly sure, I can't think of his name, is it young Butler? Is it Killian Butler? I think he's in the New York panel now. Killian would have played for London as well.
Yeah.
So I think he's actually in the current New York panel like that, and a lot of homegrown talent as well, and Garvin and those boys. So yeah, listen, it was a disappointing Tailteann Cup for Louth as well. So two teams that probably have a wee bit of a point to prove this weekend,
Big time. And your own county, Longford, you're obviously going to go for your own county there, yeah?
Yeah, look, Longford came to Newry a number of years ago and shocked down, but it's a different Longford team then. Mickey Quinn was in his prime, and a lot of footballers in Longford there, Big Gallagher, middle of the field. They had some fine footballers. Longford actually under Padraig Davis probably didn't get enough credit. They picked up a couple of lovely championship scalps along the way there. They had a great win against Monaghan as well on their travels. In one of those years, I think it was around about 2017, maybe they beat Monaghan on the road. But I think that this Longford team are a team that's maybe just coming to the end of the road. Maybe the likes of Mickey Quinn's got a lot of miles in the clock and stuff, and he's still a very, very key player for him. Mickey was one of the best footballers in Leinster for a number of years, but home advantage for Down certainly should sway that deck. Yeah.
All right, Stevie, I'd say, look, we'll see what happens next week. Round 3, obviously. Hold on, last comment there. I thought Andy Moore would have made a great impact with Leitrim. Shawnee, to be honest with you, I'd say the New York trip kind of dismantled their season. It's hard to get back on track after that. Stevie, you gone there, yeah?
Yeah, no ball. And
look at, I'll talk. Yeah, we'll talk next week. We'll see what the story is. Right, come on. Cheers.
No ball. Good man.
See you later. Bye.